Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing well. Today we have our special guest back with us, wonderful Freedom Cole. Welcome, Freedom. How are you doing?
I'm great.
So today Freedom has a special topic with us, and a lot of people have been liking this topic is compatibility between the charts. So I'll give it over to you, Freedom, and please enlighten us because I think compatibility is the big topic.
It's just relationship in general is a
Yeah.
big topic. And uh, we have various things in the texts, and then we have the modern world.
Yeah.
And there are various Vedic techniques. And then is relationship the same today as it was 1,000 years ago? And is relationships in India the same as they are in California?
Mm.
And even in a rural village in India versus Delhi, there's huge differences of relationship, whether somebody's choosing a partner, whether, there's the situations where an astrologer is brought 3 or 4 charts, and the guy says, which one should I marry? And then there's the situation where they've been in a relationship with somebody for 3 years, and they say, should I marry this person? And that's very common in the West, being with somebody 3 years and then saying, should I marry them? And very common in India, you get the 3 charts and they say, help me pick which one. And you still have people in the West who, more Indian based, who are picking, or who mom is choosing a few people for them to choose from. You have people who will, as soon as they meet somebody, they'll first thing they do is they set up an appointment with their astrologer to be like, should I date this person? Should I get to know
Yeah.
them? And before they've even dated, right?
Right.
And so everywhere in the world, we have all these different ways of relating. Um, in in there's and do I call it Western? Do I call it modern? There's or maybe I can call it European or modern European concept of falling in love. And in
Yeah.
India, there's falling in love too, but there's all these other factors that are taken into account. Where in the West, people they get married because they fell in love, and then they get divorced because they fell out of love, right?
Right. Right.
And where in a more traditional society, which we see in India, we see in South America, and a lot of these other places, you get married because the families work well together. It's a family affair, and you learn to love the person, right? And so love is a cultivated um, quality, and and so for me to say modern is not really it's not the best, because is this modern way of just using passion to get married? It's kind of disastrous. And if we just look at divorce statistics in America, divorce statistics in America do not tell us that that works,
Right.
right? It's marriages fail left and right. And in India, even with the traditional methodologies, marriages fail. So, which and are they being held together better in India because of the family, or is it more because a divorcee is so looked down upon in India, where in the Western countries it's not? So we have so many, we haven't even gotten into the Jyotish yet. We're
Yes.
just the cultural container, and all of those cultural containers will vary which Jyotish techniques we're going to be using.
Right.
What we're going to put our emphasis on. In classical Jyotish, there's so much emphasis put on the moon and its nakshatra. Now, the moon and its nakshatra, it's important, and it's a very if we look a lot of the old transit texts, they give all transits from the moon, not the ascendant. You've noticed that, yes?
Right. 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 Yes.
And my reasoning that I understand we do that is in the ancient world, everything was based on you and your family. People didn't make decisions without considering their family.
Mhm.
Where in the West, there's such an individualistic culture. And so the rising sign is so much more important because it's what I want, not what
Mm.
we as a family want. And so seeing transits from moon, that's you and your family. Seeing transits from lagna, that's you,
Okay.
right?
Interesting.
This little
Yes.
differentiation. And so doing just moon matching, there'll be people that they'll look at the two nakshatras and they'll just get the kuta points and they'll be like, it's good, it's not good. Oh, you have high kutas, get married. And there's so many other factors, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Um, so we the first factor that I use is the dasha. And we want to make sure we have the right dasha system for the person, make sure there's no alternatives. That dasha system works in the chart because we don't want to use just the dasha blindly and it just isn't the active, it's not the one that impacts that chart the most. But so that's a whole other topic, picking the right dasha for a chart. But then once we have it, we go to the Antardasha, and the Antardasha is connected. It's a very lunar, moon-based, people-based indication. And it's going to show the quality of people coming into our life.
Okay.
So if it's a malefic that's not well placed, and a person meets somebody during that time, it's unlikely that that person is going to be lucky for them.
Mm.
It's more likely that that person is going to be a problem coming into the person's life.
So you're looking at the dasha point of view, meaning like which dasha the person has met each other. If it's
Exactly.
met and they met in a positive or negative dasha, and how
Exactly.
that energies will follow through.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because what is coming into your life?
Mhm.
Um, I had a situation, it was yesterday. The person was talking about this partner that they had met, and they had met the person in the springtime when they were running a better, they were running Mars, but it didn't become a romantic until
Oh,
after they entered Rahu. And
okay.
they had an exalted Mars. So they met them in the exalted Mars, which is really nice, but it became romantic when Rahu started. And to
Interesting.
me, and to me, I don't even have to look at the chart at that moment. I can see that them as a friend is an awesome person in the person's life.
Yeah.
Them as a romantic partner, a possible marriage is going to be disastrous.
Okay.
So just in that change. And so our first thing, particularly when people are doing matrimonials, we want to do matrimonials. We want to start looking for a partner when we're in a good time period. If we start looking for somebody when we're in a bad time, it's it's not setting us up to find compatible charts.
So that timing would be like planets being in 6, 8, 12 or malefic for your rising sign or your moon sign. That
Yes.
would be it. Okay.
Exactly. So if they're malefic for your chart, we want to be careful about doing matrimonials in that time. If they're benefic for that chart, then it's wonderful. Though Rahu, it is almost always not good. And
Interesting.
sometimes Rahu dashas can last 2.5 years. So you tell somebody sometimes, I don't think it's a good time to be looking for a partner, and they're not always happy about that. Uh, there's one time I told she was a divorced woman, um, and she had just entered her Rahu time period, and I said it's not the best time to date, and she said, "Well, how long to date?" And I told her it was like 2 years, and she was like, "Yeah, right. I'm gonna be by myself for 2 years, right?" And and so maybe 6 months later or something, she met somebody, he was owner of multiple he owned multiple restaurants in New York City. You know, New York City restaurant, that's big money.
Yeah.
And he owned multiple. And he wined her and dined her and took her around, and she fell on top of the world with him. And she said, "Freedom, you're wrong. Like, look how awesome this is." And then it was only maybe another 3, 4 months. And then she found out that his hunting trips were not actually hunting trips.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so there was that deceit and deception that came in because she was in a Rahu time period. And the chance of deceit, deception, uh, um, there being some lying about what the person is, who they are. And when we're in the situation of a matrimonial and we don't know the family, that's a
Yeah.
really dangerous potential that they're not telling us the truth, or you have these dowry issues that arise sometimes, and always Rahu Antara, the marriage being organized in. So the dasha is the first, and that's like it's a real simple situation. It'll literally show charts that are coming that are multiple compatible charts or multiple incompatible charts landing on my desk.
Mhm. So it's
Um,
like it's timing.
it's totally so.
Time.
So we start with timing.
Yeah.
Which with even in the Western world, I ask them, so when did you meet the person? And I'll just look at the timing of when the two people met.
Yeah.
And it just tells me so much.
That was
Um,
very interesting point because yeah, I never thought of that. So that's very, very interesting. Like the timing, what
the timing.
energies they're bringing in. Yes.
Who am I? Who's coming into my life right now?
Right.
Then there's a handful of other factors. I don't know if I have an order of them.
Okay. Yeah.
But we next have to look at the seventh house and Venus.
Okay.
And the seventh house and Venus is showing us what kind of karma do we have, to what kind of partners do we have karma with. If Venus is exalted and we have Jupiter in the seventh house, then we have a very intelligent partner coming, who's a very high character and good quality partner. If we have Rahu in the seventh and a debilitated, multiple malefically afflicted Venus, then the person they could be and respectable, and they're dating people who are drug addicts or can't get their career together, or so the condition of Venus, it gives us a certain nature of what kind of partner they're going to be trying to they're going to be attracted to, and that will be coming into their life naturally. And so if we have afflictions with the seventh house or Venus, we want to do some remedies before the person even starts looking for a relationship. So we need a good time, and then we need to make sure that whatever remedy for the seventh lord, seventh house and Venus has been performed properly.
Yeah. So in general, you would look at the seventh house. Would you also look at seventh house Lord?
So the seventh, I was trying to keep the seventh lord
Oh, okay, okay, sorry.
as a next factor,
Okay.
because then we have the seventh lord, and the seventh lord is how you are engaging in that realm. And the seventh lord going to 6, 8, or 12 will bring all kinds of marriage disasters.
Mm.
Um, I should say the seventh lord going to the 6th, 8th, or 12th, or the 6th, 8th, or 12th lord going to the seventh. These two things will cause a lot of upheavals, and so we need to do some remedies for that if that's the case before we start looking. And occasionally there'll be people that they found somebody, they're ready to get married, and then we need to do that remedy, and it's like the wrong time to do that remedy. We should really be doing any 6, 8, 12 lord or Lord in remedy before even going to looking at matrimonials.
So there
And
are remedies and that there are things that can calm the effects down, right?
there's
There's
remedies.
hope, right?
There's always remedies
Yeah.
if there's love.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. Very
Yeah,
true.
yeah. And so making sure that we have, and that brings us into when we talk about compatibility. When we talk about a relationship, there's actually three main factors. There's each person individual, and then there's how they come together.
Mhm.
And so sometimes they can come together great, but they have dysfunction in and of themselves.
Right.
And so analyzing the seventh house, analyzing Venus relative to the seventh house Karaka, then looking at where the seventh house Lord has gone. And the seventh house Lord being well placed, it sets us up for a better marriage potentials.
Mhm.
So meaning that we're going to find more compatible charts more easily.
Right.
Notice before we even get to compatibility, I'm talking about what do we need to do to ourselves to find a compatible person.
Right. Yeah. The most important, right? The
And
self.
and I've seen situations where I see some issues in the chart. I'll give some remedies. They do the remedies, and then all of a sudden, all kinds of good potentials arise. And I've seen really intense karma where we've done remedies, still bad charts, done remedies, still bad charts, and it's just really working to if we can't get a good compatibility, is it even worth? Let's do the remedy until we start getting these better quality charts.
Mhm.
Um, and then Guna. Guna, once we've worked out this compatibility realm. And I guess there's one more realm to bring in, and that's upapada.
Yeah.
And before we get into the coming to, more, and so upapada is and the seventh house, that is how am I relating to my other? How am I relating to my partner? That's what is our dynamic going to be? The upapada it's the social aruta of the relationship. It's how there's certain people that like if I said Melania Trump, you
Yeah.
can't bring her to mind without thinking about her husband. We
Right.
we we never really see her alone. Like there's people are and that unit is her upapada showing itself. And so the upapada is this relationship as it's perceived by culture. And it will show the upapada itself and its lord will show the social status that the partner is coming from. So if it's
Interesting.
exalted, we have the potential of really up marrying. If it's debilitated, then we're looking at somebody from a more challenged family, being the more likely spouse. And with that upapada, malefics in that upapada can show they can show more malefic situations in marriage.
Okay.
Um, and and the big example, one of my least favorite friends in the upapada is Saturn.
Yeah.
And Param Guru Sanjay Rath calls Saturn in the upapada, he calls it bachelor yoga. Because even when the person gets married, they still act like a bachelor. Even after marriage, there's just because the upapada also, when we get married, our goal is to um, share with our partner. Everything that's mine is yours. And
Yes.
Saturn doesn't share. It's like, no, this is my space. That
Right.
that's your space, and mine's a little bit bigger than yours.
So,
Yeah.
for example, okay, I'll just um, brief, like, so for example, if someone has, I'm just giving you an example, like Capricorn as their upapada, right?
Yeah.
Lagna, right?
With nothing in it, with
Nothing,
nothing in it.
not, yeah,
Yeah.
nothing in it, but the Lord of its Saturn goes and exalted. Like, for example,
Yeah.
Libra. This
Yeah.
is like moon or this brand. So still it's very Saturn energy. Still, it's like MySpace and Bachelor Yoga. We still say that?
Well, the thing is, if there's a planet there, it has a really strong impact. If there's no planet, then we take the Lord.
Okay.
If there's any planet, that takes precedence with
Okay.
conjunct Upapada. And so if there's no planet with the Upapada and it's in Capricorn, then we have a much more reserved, held back partner. It's not the same, it's not as intense as if Saturn was there. They're not
Okay.
as they're not as separate and not sharing in nature,
Mm.
and not participating and not merging. Uh,
Yeah.
Saturn is the most not merging in marriage, and Jupiter is the most merging. With Jupiter, it's like, no, 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 it's yours, and it's like, yeah, but they bought it for you. It's like, yeah, yeah, but it's everything is mine is yours. Like that's the Jupiter with the Upapada,
Yeah.
and if that Saturn was exalted, they're still kind of distant, but they're a very well-to-do. They do it in a very proper way. It's like, well, if you have your space, you can clean it the way you want. If I have my space, I can, so they have nice reasons for it,
Yeah.
and they give it a nice kind of decor in their reasoning. When Saturn would be debilitated, then it's just looks greedy. It looks like, no, I don't like the way you do that. This is all mine.
Yeah.
That little bit of a difference.
And
And
Jupiter sounds nicer.
Jupiter sounds, all the benefits there are nice. Benefits, or Saturn is nice there if it's in like a Mahapurusha yoga.
Okay. Mhm.
Then it's going to show your partner is just a powerful. Maybe they don't share, but you have your own house, so who cares if they
Right.
it's okay if they don't want to share their house as long as they bought you a mansion too, right? So it's that little bit of a difference. Then we have the second from the Upapada Lagna, and the second from the Upapada Lagna shows the sustenance of that marriage. And each marriage is going to have a different Upapada. So if somebody was married, got divorced, we go eighth from, and we have another Upapada to show us these two different spouses. And we could probably talk just for an hour on Upapadas. But if there's an affliction in the second from the Upapada, that gives a high likelihood that that marriage will end in divorce.
Okay.
The upapada itself is the person. The second from is how long it lasts. Somebody can have a long marriage with a terrible person. Somebody can have a short marriage with a wonderful person.
Yeah.
So the upapada gives us that variation. I recently, maybe just recently had a client. They couldn't find somebody. The family couldn't find somebody for the younger brother. And when I looked at the chart, the Upapada was so afflicted. It was so
Mm.
afflicted. It just it had Rahu and Mars, and I think one was debilitated, and it was just horrendous. And um, I said, they were a good family. The person himself was a good person, but the Upapada showed a really not, somebody who was deceptive and mean and not nice. And so I was like, this is why you can't find anybody, because you're trying to look for somebody nice and your karma is showing somebody horrible. So we did a Kumbha Vivaha. That way we could break that marriage and go to the next marriage. That way we had the opportunity to have a more friendly, kind, compatible partner for the person. So
Okay. So did they find somebody after
this was
like?
I'm giving us that was 2 weeks ago or something that
Oh
was,
wow.
but it regularly they find somebody much sooner
Cool.
after that's done, if the upapada is what's holding back the marriage potential.
That's so cool. Yeah.
Um, And so this social element of the relationship. And so we have that. Then we have let's see, uh, the D9, the Navamsha, and its seventh house, that will show the more interpersonal element of the relationship. Where the upapada is the social level of the relationship, the Navamsha seventh house and the eighth from there for each relationship will show who is that person. Are they, do they like music? Do they, what are the things that they're interested in? And it'll show this more interior level of who they are and their qualities. And the Navamsha rarely will block a marriage. It normally will just show the qualities. Are they a mechanical engineer or are they working in a hotel?
Mm.
These kind of qualities. And yeah, and it's important. It's not a make it or break it for getting married. With making sure that that's compatible. Um, we Then I look at Guna
Okay.
when I'm comparing two charts. And we have multiple different ways that we look at Guna, but the primary way to look at Guna is the moon's Guna. We can
Okay.
also when we look at Brihat Prashar Hora Shastra, there's a whole chapter on Guna. And that chapter on Guna is primarily looking at lagna relative to career, what career you're going to be, what's the right Guna of career for an individual.
Mhm.
When we're looking at relationship, we want to make sure that the two individuals are in the same Guna of relating. And the benefics will give us more of a kalyana, meaning a friendly disposition and a more beneficial Guna. Um, and when we're looking at Guna of the moon, we're looking at the fourth house and the moon itself. When Saturn is with the moon or the fourth house, we're getting a little bit more of a less sharing of emotions.
Okay. Mhm.
Somebody who's more reserved, they're not as open, they don't want to just sit there and tell you everything that's going on inside of them. It's, they're reserved, they hold back. And um, when we have Mars in the fourth or with moon, we get somebody who's very easily triggered. There's an intensity that's with them. And the most important gunas to not match or are when there's that more Saturnian guna, giving that closed down tamas element with the rajas of the getting triggered with the Mars. Because when Mars gets triggered and Saturn closes down, it just makes Mars more intense.
Mm.
And
Right.
so we want to avoid that Saturn Mars mix in that situation. K2 in the fourth or with the moon, also good to avoid the Saturn element. Saturn is not as emotionally sharing. And K2 in the fourth or with the moon often feels alone and left out.
So, are you like, so it does, like, okay. So, for example, if somebody
Yeah.
has Moon and Saturn, so somebody has Moon and Saturn together, or Saturn fourth from their Moon, or sorry,
In
Saturn
the fourth
fourth
house.
in the
Yeah.
fourth house, and the other person has Moon K2 together, or like K2 four,
Then
is that what you're saying?
if they have K2, Moon and the other one is K2 is Moon Saturn Sambandha
Yeah,
situation.
yeah,
And I'm considering the fourth house as Moon Sambandha, right? Emotional guna.
yeah.
Then the dynamic we get there is that the one person doesn't share their emotions enough. They might go on a work trip for 2 weeks and not even call their spouse.
Yeah.
And the K2 with the moon, they're like, I feel so alone. Do you care about me? And the other person is not saying, yes, I care about you, because they're not sharing their emotions.
Yeah.
And so it's not a make it or break it, but it's a core relationship compatibility. And in a time period where people got married, the woman moved to the parents' house, became part of the entire family. It didn't really matter. That wasn't as big of a deal because okay, your husband's not telling you love you, but his sister is, and mom is. And so that moon kind of took care of everything, just the moon compatibility. But in the realms where we're moving and we're living in apartments by ourselves and houses by ourselves, that moon condition has a huge impact. And so making sure that we're in this right compatibility of Guna is important. Then we looking at sexuality, and it's one that in some, if we go to the old Indian man, to get that compatibility, he might not touch too much on that, but in this day and age, people want sexual compatibility. And so looking at the seventh house in the Navamsha and really making sure that there's compatibility there, and that's a whole big talk in and of itself.
Yeah.
But most important is making sure that the planets in or lording the seventh house of the Navamsha they're friendly to each other and similar speeds to each other. Because if we have Saturn there, Saturn gives a relatively low libido, where Moon is the fastest moving planet, it gives the highest libido. If we have somebody who has high libido and somebody with extremely low libido, we've already created a problem. And then we have to start looking at fidelity. Are there going to be fidelity issues in the chart? Because we just created a not sexually compatible couple. And we can get away with sexual incompatibility if all fidelity issues are okay. But if there's any little fidelity issue showing up in either person's chart, then making sure that the sexual compatibility is really good. It's one of the best things that we can do to make sure that we're not going to have some infidelity in the relationship.
Right. Yeah, that's an important point. Yeah.
Such an important and so overlooked in many types. So we're making sure that the emotions are compatible. We're making sure that the sexuality is compatible. And then looking at, then I use synastry a lot.
Yeah.
Where we're looking at, the moon being 212 or 311 or 410 and that relationship. And I find the two bhava sambandhas that I don't like are 212 and 68.
Yeah.
They always bring some issue in that karka's realm. The 212, it brings a missing. Whatever the karka is, there's a not getting. So for example, if it's Mercury, if the two Mercuries are 212 in the chart, then the person is not getting how the other person communicates. They're not getting how the other person wants to share. And so the person will say something and the person will hear something completely different.
Yeah.
And so that 212 is this missing. The 6-8 relationship, that shows an incompatibility. The way the one person shares, it drives it kind of almost, the other person just doesn't like it in and of itself. Like it doesn't even matter what they said, just how they said it, the person doesn't like, right? Yeah.
They're probably triggered by each other without saying it. With six, yeah. So you also don't like 311? 311?
311 I put in the neutral zone.
Okay.
311 has the it works. It'll make it work.
Okay.
Does it like working? Does it not work? No, it works. So it will, it will, it won't, a relationship won't break because a 311 doesn't break something.
Okay.
What I've found, and this is just my own looking at charts over the years, we can get away with one or two of a 212 or 6/8. Having 2/6/8s is difficult. If we're getting the Guna compatibility, the sexual compatibility, there's healthy seventh house, seventh lords, upapadas, we can get away with 2/6/8s. 3/6/8s, it's not going to work. Um, uh, if we throw maybe 1/6/8 and two 212s, maybe we need four to really, depending on how strong these other factors of relating in the chart are.
Yeah,
So
that makes
yeah,
sense.
what I found is sometimes people, they'll just look at 2/6/8s and they'll be like, oh, this doesn't work. But maybe the gunas in the sexuality or the gunas in the career or something else holds the person together, or they both have beautiful upapadas and seventh lords and Venuses. So they will work through whatever the conflict is. There's a working with, the worse somebody's seventh house and Venus is, the more important good compatibility is.
Okay.
The more beautiful a person's seventh house, seventh lord, Venus is, then we can get away with some things that aren't the most compatible because they have the relating karmic skills to be able to make it work. Um, and the order that I use in
Yeah.
the synastry, I take the moon, the ascendant, and then I go to Mercury.
Mhm.
And Mercury is not one that we're traditionally told is the most important. And my reasoning for that is I think that in the ancient world, when it was much more of a big family system, if you didn't understand your husband, someone else in the family would help you understand him, right? There's this whole kind of network
Yeah.
that explains things. But when we are in a couple living in an apartment, mom and dad are, a good distance away from the daily life and interaction, how good the communication is and the communication breakdowns will impact everything. And if there's other factors not working in the chart, we can talk and work it through. But if you can't talk well with each other, then how are you going to work through anything else?
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting point. Yeah. 212, I noticed that too. With 212, the communication is very off.
It's
Freedom, some,
off. It's
yeah,
off is the key
yeah,
word. I
yeah.
use the term missing. There's a missing that happens.
Yeah, but sometimes some people like would take, for example, they say if so one person's Mercury is in like Aquarius, like air sign, and one's
Yeah.
in Earth. It's not, it's missing, but I feel it's more when it's 212. I think then
Mhm.
it's really, really missing because you're just not getting each other. What, like you said,
Yeah.
someone is saying something and the other person is hearing something totally different.
And then we have sometimes some cancellations with that. Like say, for
Okay.
example, one Mercury is in Aries and one Mercury is in Taurus. But
Okay.
the one that's in Aries is conjunct Venus.
Okay.
So that can Mercury conjunct Venus in Aries has a better ability to understand the Mercury in Taurus because Venus is kind of creating a sambandha between them. So there's these different ways that there can be other sambandhas. And so with that sambandha, maybe we need to be in a loving mood when
Yeah.
we communicate. And then that Venus will rectify. Or maybe we need to bring the sister in or something to help and she can rectify. So the sambandha, another graha bringing sambandha between the planets will give us a method of working through that 212 or that 6/8 situation.
Mm.
Um, but we have to take all these factors as a whole, and there's a few other factors that are minor, But to me, what I often see is, I mean, the in worst case scenarios is people just look at the kutas and say
Hmm.
yes, they're compatible or not. And
Yeah.
and and I
Kuta, sorry, when you say kuta, you mean those numbers, right? That they
the
match?
numbers, whether you're 15 compatibility or a 29 compatibility or yeah.
And I know, I mean, it, not always that works because I know few people who has like high kutas, the matching, and still the compatibility isn't there because maybe the other factors are missing. So I really like synastry. One of the
Yeah.
things I really like synastry because I do feel that what energies one other bringing in
But
each other's
remember that
lives.
synastry is 1/3.
Yeah, yeah, like part of it, right? Yeah.
It's well, the thing is, there's all the doshas or
Yeah.
blessings in someone's chart, all the doshas and blessings in the other person's chart, and then there's how they come together. And we can have two terrible people come together so beautifully, and we can have
Yeah.
two wonderful people who together. I had a situation where just the other week it was a gentleman who it was his second marriage, and he's the nicest, sweetest guy, and he said she makes me into such a terrible person. Like I yell, I say things I never wanted to say, and I looked at the compatibility between the two charts, synastry wise, was horrible.
Mm.
And so she, even though they're two like beautiful, beautiful people, just beautiful people in and of themselves, together they just didn't fit. And
Yeah.
then you have those good synastry, but the one person, their Venus is messed up, their Saturn is giving them a bachelor yoga, the Rahu's in the fourth house, making disturbing the doshas, and so it's and so it doesn't matter how good the compatibility is,
And
which
and
yeah,
maybe not everybody's meant for marriage and relationships. Maybe, there's that acceptance has to be there too. And I
yes.
think astrology is the wonderful and comprehensive tool and the science to just really help us guide through it. And it can save a lot of energy in general, right? And
A
bring a lot of
100%.
awareness there.
Yeah. And as you said, marriage isn't for everybody. The other side of the spectrum of we sometimes get the people that want to be celibate yogis, and you can see that Venus is conjunct the Aruda lagna or some combination with Mars, and it's like I don't know who convinced you that that's good for you, but the last
Yeah.
thing we want is a bad yogi, is a bad swami, right? You know,
Yeah.
it's and in the end what I tell people like that is it's better to be a householder that's spiritual in the right
Yes.
way than to be a swami who's being unethical sexually
100%. 100%.
because you'll destroy your spirituality by being an unethical swami.
Yeah, and I think it all comes down to being true to yourself and finding that, self-discovery, right?
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all these factors, sometimes there's certain factors that when the gunas are so well to each other and Venus is so well, it'll make anything work in the compatibility.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And these are the factors that we really have to pay attention to. The other element, there's getting married, there's matching, and then there's once people are married and then they come for it's not working and we got to talk to them. And when they come because it's not working out, that's when it really becomes important to take these to have these three separate factors: him, the other, each partner, and then how they're together, because we have to find what is causing the issue. What is it that's making these two fight and not get along? If is it the compatibility, or is it something that's in their chart that individual needs to work on?
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. Do you also I don't know if I've asked you before this. Do you use Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto
Um,
in the chart readings,
in the readings.
or
So
in general? Like, what do you think?
uh, I read a few people,
Yeah,
the writings who use them
yeah.
for mundane predictions.
Okay,
I like Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune when it comes to mundane predictions, looking at big cycles. I've
okay.
seen really, really beautiful things, but some of them, an 84-year cycle, how pertinent is that in an individual's chart? A
Yeah,
planet that has an 84-year cycle? Um, I use three programs when I
yeah.
give a reading. Uh, Deva Guru is my primary, and then I use Jagannath Hora and Sri Jyoti Star just for as secondaries for things. And in my Sri Jyoti Star, I show the Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune in the chart. And I've had it in there the last 15 plus years, and I just have them in there because I'm waiting. I'm waiting I'm waiting for a moment where I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the only thing that could explain that.
Right.
And it hasn't happened. It hasn't happened that that's the only thing that could explain that in a human's chart.
Hmm.
When
Interesting.
when it comes to um mundane, like Austin Coppock recently gave some year predictions on, he gives year predictions every year uh,
Okay.
on the Astrology podcast with Chris Brennan. And he talked about the Russia's cycles with those with Uranus, Pluto, Neptune. And it was just amazing how every time certain alignments happen, what happens in Russia based upon its formations and that part of the globe. And we have a big shift coming up in 2026. So I'm waiting to see, like, will that conjunction that did something all those other times show itself? And if it
Hmm.
does, that shows us in these big predictions that 100% it works. I haven't seen proof yet with humans. What about, do you use them?
Um, no, I mean, I just like to see it in the synastry at times,
Uh-huh.
and I
Uh-huh.
find it a little bit, but I have mixed
Yeah.
results. Yeah.
What do you, because like with Mercury, we can see communication. With Jupiter, we can see how they use finances. What do you see with those planets?
No, I just sometimes when on just on the personal charts, like
Yeah.
because I'm not an astrologist, so I don't
Yeah.
read charts or anything. But yeah, just in like if I see like with like Uranus or Pluto, if the Mercury, I see the comfort level because I see that with Rahu too. Rahu
Uh,
Mercury synastry, I find the communication is really flowing and they feel very comfortable there. Where I see K2 Mercury, usually communication is either abrupt or it cuts or it's not as clearly or flowing. I
mhm.
mean, just on the personal, my own
So
experience,
seeing how it's conjunct, how the planets overlay each other.
overlays. Yeah, yeah,
Interesting.
yeah,
I haven't paid attention to that.
yeah, yeah,
So I'll take a peek and see what I see there.
yeah,
And as I said, it's there in one of the programs. I have it. I've been waiting for that thing that I can't explain with anything else.
yeah.
Yeah. And
Interesting. Thank you.
yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was really comprehensive and this is really profound. I mean, a new level of looking at it, like the dasha system and
Hmm.
someone entering in your life. And that can be used for friendships as well, right? Like any friend you meet or any kind of,
100%.
yeah.
And an element that I didn't mention with the Shah is also the transits. So we
Okay,
can bring the transits in the same way. What was transiting what at the moment they met somebody?
interesting. That's very
Jupiter,
interesting.
Jupiter in or aspecting the seventh house often will bring a good friend.
Mm,
And how wonderful to meet your spouse when you have a transit, showing that a good friend has come into your life,
beautiful. Yes,
right? Yeah.
yes, very
So
beautiful.
so all the little transits will also play. Is this a supportive time, or is this a time where I'm suffering? And if somebody comes into your life when it's a time where the planets are saying you're going to suffer, it's not looking good for what they might represent for your life, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
You know, once I read it somewhere, I think it was a blog, I don't know how true it is, but they
Yeah.
said when you meet somebody in your Sarisati, that's supposed to be the person's supposed to be in your life forever. Apparently, they are more stable. I don't know how true that is, but I read it
Yeah.
somewhere that when you meet somebody, somebody in your Sarisati is supposed to be, I don't know, more stable or more like friendship or connection.
Mhm.
I mean, I
Mhm.
don't know how true that is, but I read
Yeah.
it somewhere.
I haven't noticed that.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's 7 years out of 29, and it only happens in those small chunks,
Yeah.
right in the beginning. And we have and we're meeting people on a regular basis who are becoming friends for life.
Yes.
So so
True.
I think it's a little too limited of a time frame for me to really find overly relevant as a technique.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's just
Thank
my
you.
logic thinking about
Yeah.
that.
No, makes sense. Yeah. I remember reading it once long time ago on
Yeah.
a blog, one of the blogs online. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time and with wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. I learned a lot. I always learn, and everybody loves you on our channel, like the reviews and everything. So that's why I was like, should I mute? Because they're like, stop talking, let him talk. You're breaking the flow.
No, no,
Thank
no.
you. I
It's
hope you.
better. But just as closing, um, really look at the chart as a whole, because we have two different humans coming together, and humans have so many factors. Don't make compatibility and telling people not to get married without a deep, full analysis. Um, and yeah, that's the big message that I was hoping to convey. Really look at everything in the relationship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you so much. I hope
Yeah.
you guys all enjoyed the session today. Thank you. If you have any questions, leave us a comment below. Thank you.